Welcome back to Let's Both Play Resident Evil 5. I'm BurningDogFace.
And I'm Ronin Drake.
And today we're going to learn about the B.S.A.A.
And this time I'm going through the lore so that I'm not just sitting there doing nothing. Following the annihilation of Raccoon City, Umbrella was hit hard with multiple lawsuits for their involvement in the incident. But there was an organization that was hit even harder by the fallout of that, the Global Pharmaceutical Consortium, oh boo-hoo, an organization comprised of pharmaceutical companies from around the world. Umbrella's development of and experimentation with bioorganic weapons, BOWs, along with the sale of those weapons on people to distrust the Global Pharmaceutical Consortium, and the fact that Umbrella was an executive board member only deepened their misgivings. Are they making us feel bad for pharmaceutical companies? I don't...
Seems like a weird way to spin that.
Yeah. If things had ended there, the consortium may have just escaped with a tarnished reputation. But in today's world, medicine is an integral part of almost all medical procedures. Go figure. The public is also quite informed when it comes to medications are trusted and which are not. If the population loses trust in the pharmaceutical company responsible for creating certain medications, it can quickly bankrupt said company.
Sounds about right.
The Umbrella trials took a turn for the worse when the consortium when prosecutors presented evidence that incriminated many other pharmaceutical companies. Prosecutors showed that Umbrella acquired medicines and techniques developed by other companies and employed them in their own bioweapons research. They commissioned each of the respective companies to only partially develop certain medication so that they could not be traced to what was ultimately being developed. The responsible companies thus unwittingly contributed to the development of bioweapons. Until this development in the case, the consortium looked at the lawsuit as Umbrella's problem. Now, the problem was thrust into their laps as well. The companies that were linked to Umbrella faced the possibility of sharing blame for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocent people. And if Umbrella lost the lawsuits, they would face bankruptcy as well. Even if Umbrella was found not guilty of any wrongdoing, the negative publicity would not only be disastrous for sales, but the governments of the world would revoke the company's permits to sell their products.
Heaven forbid.
Yeah. Not having permission to distribute their products worldwide would effectively dismantle until they change their name or something like that.
Sounds about right.
The pharmaceutical companies realized they had no choice but to take drastic measures to counter their dismal prospects. The consortium decided to strike a deal with the prosecutor. They would put all their efforts in with the case against Umbrella, even to the point of turning over any internal company documentation. The prosecutors in the case, being obsessed with seeing Umbrella fall, agreed to accept the help of the consortium's companies, and in return, they would not pursue legal action against them. In 2003, Umbrella was found guilty on all charges. With its fall, the scandal that rocked the pharmaceutical industry to its core could finally be put to rest. But Umbrella's dismantlement led to an unforeseen situation. In the fallout of Umbrella's collapse, BOWs began to show up on the black market. The weapons wound up in the hands of terrorists, guerrilla fighters, and unstable state governments. Soon, the threat of these BOWs began to be felt around the world. Faced with a new Umbrella-like crisis, the Global Pharmaceutical Consortium knew they would have to take immediate action. It was then that the Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance, the B.S.A.A, was formed to fight threats from BOWs. So wait, an international created by pharmaceutical companies?
It's not the most obvious path for that to take.
These pharmaceutical companies hiring all these armed dudes and mercenaries.
I thought it was a UN thing.
Upon its initial foundation, only 11 elite individuals were made part of the B.S.A.A. Their job was limited to that of observers to armies and police units around the world that conducted counter-bioterrorism operations. Unfortunately, the world's bioterrorism problem was much bigger than anyone had anticipated, so a new course of action was required. Handled. To that end, consideration was given to creating a team that could react instantly to threats, but the B.S.A.A. was still only a civilian-led organization. They could not operate freely in sovereign nations, and thus were unable to conduct investigations, make pertinent arrests, or even use force when the situation dictated it. It was clear now that the threat of bioterror was now the world's problem, and something would have to be done. The B.S.A.A. was then reformed under the UN's jurisdiction. Oh,
Hey, I was half right.
That's better. As a UN-controlled special forces team, the B.S.A.A.'s acceptance by the UN's member states was taken as a given. The truth of the matter was that only 70% of the member states would approve the B.S.A.A. activities on their soil. The states would only approve B.S.A.A. activities in their countries on a conditional basis. That is how the current incarnation of the B.S.A.A. was formed. The B.S.A.A.'s headquarters was located in England, but any further details of the location were not released to the public. Since a B.S.A.A. team had to be able to be deployed within 12 hours, it was assumed that they were located near an airport hub or on an Air Force base. Some sources claimed that the B.S.A.A. had bases in the area under their jurisdiction. The following is a list of areas under the jurisdiction of their respective B.S.A.A. branches. European headquarters in Russia. Middle East branch, the Middle East and part of Africa. North American branch, the entire North American continent. Chris Redfield is stationed here. South American branch, the entire South American continent. West African branch, the western part of the African continent. Sheva Alomar is stationed here. East African branch, the eastern part of the African continent. Far East branch, Eastern Russia and the countries east of India. Oceanian branch, Australia is the center of the operations for Oceania. Antarctica, where Umbrella's Antarctic base was located, falls under the jurisdiction of the Oceanian branch. I feel like that's just there for the nerds, like, well, what about Antarctica? It's like Umbrella had a base there and nobody's looking at it. Each B.S.A.A. branch had a considerable number of people on their tactical teams, most of them coming from police special forces and militaries around the world. The support staff of the teams was also quite large, and they came mainly from government organizations in different countries. There were many groups of experts on the staff that provided technical, medical, physical, and mental support to the teams. The B.S.A.A. deployment teams were divided into two groups. The first group was the Special Operations Unit, the SOU. The SOU were sanctioned to infiltrate an area, engage in combat, and subdue offenders. Teams were usually comprised of 12 members, and each team was divided into 3 4-man cells. A special feature of the SOU is the flexibility of its personnel during operations. In order to match the scale of an operation, cells from other teams are brought in on a regular basis. For one specific joint operation, there were 70 elite members working together.
That'd have been something to see.
Yeah, what are the odds we're going to get that during our African adventure? Dan DeChant is currently the leader of the Alpha Team for this operation. The team is comprised of his own standard team along with cells from other teams. The designation Alpha Team will only be used for this operation. Reports indicate that because no unknown BOWs are involved, the efficacy of this tactical team's methods for handling them may be low, and consideration has to be given to these strong points that raise their efficacy. Another key part of the B.S.A.A. is the Special Operations Unit, the SO. Usually, they are referred to as just agents, and unlike the SOU, agents work alone. The agents are primarily involved in investigations and espionage activities, and as such, they are considered the eyes and ears of the B.S.A.A. During certain operations, it may become difficult for tactical teams to penetrate the front, so it is up to the agents to carry out the missions. During those types of missions, a two-man cell is the basic deployment unit required to carry out the mission. Sometimes, agents must go beyond the jurisdiction of the B.S.A.A. branch to carry out their missions. Many of them are dispatched to areas with unlawful activities. This mission sees Agent Chris Redfield in that role. Agents who work alone are highly capable, and they rank higher than SOU members. However, agents are not chosen so much for their abilities but for the psychological state and aptitude in handling situations. In actual skills and abilities, they may be outperformed by SOU members. I guess it's a thing like, they may not be as good a shot, but when shit hits the fan, they keep their cool.
Sounds about right.
Which I imagine is something that comes up often when, you're fighting giant ooze monsters. Ooze monsters that have to go into a furnace or something. The B.S.A.A. is a public organization with an international staff, but owing to the logistics of running such an organization, it is a well-known funding comes from the Global Pharmaceutical Consortium. While this relationship has been the target of much criticism, the consortium's funding removes the financial burden from participatory nations. And as such, any motivation to change the situation and incur unwanted expenses. As for the consortium, their sponsorship acts as a much-needed industry-wide PR service. So far, this partnership has been beneficial to all parties involved. On a final note, the 11 members who were part of the B.S.A.A. from the beginning are highly respected within the organization, and are known as the Original 11. The name comes from the original 7, who were the 7 astronauts selected for Project Mercury. One of the original is Chris Redfield. The original 11 also work alongside many of the tactical teams.
And there you have it.